For 15 years, David believed he was safe. Same shop, same shelves, same predictable income. Every morning at 7:30, he unlocked the door. Every evening at 6 o'clock, he counted the register. Nothing dramatic, nothing dangerous. And that was exactly how he liked it. The shop had been his father's. It paid the mortgage. It covered groceries. It never made him rich. But it never embarrassed him either. He called it stability. He told himself he was being responsible. His father used to say, "Don't reach too high. The fall hurts more." So David never reached. He adjusted prices carefully, avoided loans, ignored suggestions to expand. He believed small meant safe. Until one Monday morning, a construction sign appeared 2 blocks away. A national supermarket chain was coming. Bright lights, lower prices, endless inventory. Within 90 days, David's revenue dropped by 50%. Half. 15 years of cautious living cracked in 3 months. And that's when something uncomfortable became impossible to ignore. Playing small doesn't protect you from risk. It only makes sure you're unprepared when risk finally arrives. Because stability, when stretched too long, doesn't become strength. It becomes dependence. Right next to David's shop was an empty lot, 3 times the size of his store. It had been there for years, unbuilt, unused, silent. Most people barely noticed it. David noticed it every single day. Late at night, after locking the door, when the street grew quiet and the lights inside his shop felt too dim, he would stand by the front window and look at that open space, just a few steps away. But it felt like a different life. In his mind, he sometimes allowed himself to imagine it. Wider aisles, more inventory, a small coffee corner where customers could sit instead of rushing out. He imagined conversations, laughter, movement. For a moment, he didn't see the empty lot. He saw possibility. Then the voice returned. "You're barely managing this place. Why risk losing what little you have?" And just like that, the vision collapsed. He told himself expansion was greed, that ambition was unnecessary, that enough was maturity. But here's what he never admitted. It wasn't wisdom stopping him. It was fear, carefully disguised as practicality. And fear sounds very reasonable when it whispers. If there's something in your life you've been staring at for years, something close enough to touch but too uncomfortable to pursue, don't scroll away. Because that empty lot might not be land. It might be you. The supermarket opened on a Saturday morning. Music played through outdoor speakers. Bright banners stretched across the entrance. Red signs screamed, "Grand opening discounts." People lined up before the doors even opened. David stood inside his shop, pretending not to watch. By noon, he didn't have to pretend anymore. The street felt different. Fewer footsteps passed his window. Fewer familiar faces walked in. The first regular customer who chose the supermarket came in later that week. She avoided eye contact at first. "Sorry, David. It's just easier over there." He smiled. Of course he did. That's what small business owners do. They smile. But that night, when he counted the register, the numbers felt wrong. Not slightly wrong, dangerously wrong. Within weeks, afternoons grew longer and quieter. Shelves stayed full longer, and the air inside the shop felt heavier. 3 months later, revenue had fallen by 50%. 15 years of cautious living, cut in half. And here's what hurt most. It wasn't the competition. It was the realization that he had seen this possibility years ago and done nothing. The empty lot next door suddenly looked different. Not like opportunity, like accusation. For the first time, David understood something he had avoided for years. Playing small didn't protect him. It only delayed the impact. And now, the impact had arrived. One Thursday evening, David locked the shop an hour earlier than usual. Not because there were no customers, but because he couldn't stand smiling anymore. He turned off half the lights and sat on the floor behind the counter. The silence felt louder than the construction noise across the street. He opened the ledger again. Same numbers, same decline. He did the math 3 times. There was no mistake. If things continued like this, he had 6 months, maybe less. For 15 years, he had told himself one comforting sentence. It's fine. This is enough. But that night, the sentence sounded hollow. Enough for what? Enough to survive? Enough to slowly disappear? He thought about the empty lot, about the years he'd stood at the window, about the ideas he dismissed because they felt too risky. And for the first time, he admitted something he had never said out loud. I was afraid. Not of failing, but of being seen trying. Regret doesn't explode. It settles quietly in your chest, heavy, persistent, unforgiving. And here's the truth most men don't say. It's easier to live with small disappointment than with visible failure. But that night, David realized something worse. Small disappointment compounds until it becomes collapse. If you've ever realized too late that your caution was actually fear, don't ignore that feeling. Stay with this story, because this is where everything begins to shift. Sarah didn't ask many questions when she found him sitting on the floor. She'd been watching the numbers too, watching the longer evenings, the shorter receipts, the forced smiles. She sat beside him quietly. No advice, no blame, just presence. After a while, David spoke first. I should have expanded when I had the chance. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was the kind of sentence a man says when he's finally tired of defending himself. Sarah didn't respond immediately. And then she said something simple. There's someone you should talk to. David frowned. I don't need motivation speeches. It's not a speech, she replied. It's perspective. She mentioned Mr. Chen, the man who once owned a small electronics shop in the same town. Now he ran stores across the state. David let out a short laugh. Why would someone like him waste time on someone like me? The words sounded modest, but they weren't. They were protective. And when a man says people like him and someone like me, what he really means is, I've already decided I don't belong. And that belief is harder to break than fear. That night, David lay awake, not thinking about the supermarket, not thinking about the bills, but thinking about one uncomfortable possibility. What if the real limitation wasn't the market, but the frame he had built around himself? 3 days later, David stood inside an elevator moving toward the 20th floor. His palms were sweating, not because of the height, because he felt out of place. Men like Mr. Chen didn't meet men like him. That was the story he had been telling himself. The office was simpler than he expected. No luxury display, no intimidating atmosphere. Just a man in his late 60s with steady eyes. Mr. Chen didn't ask about profit margins. He didn't ask about strategy, and he walked toward the window and motioned for David to join him. "From up here," he said calmly. "The town looks smaller, doesn't it?" David nodded. 30 years ago, I stood in a shop the size of yours. I believe that was my entire world. Then Mr. Chen placed 2 glass jars on the table. One small, one large. He filled the small jar with water. When you think small, you fill up quickly. You believe you've reached capacity. He poured the same water into the larger jar. The level dropped. Same water, more space. Then he looked directly at David. "You didn't lose to the supermarket." A pause. "You lost to the size of your thinking." Silence followed. Not motivational silence, uncomfortable silence. Because deep down, David knew it was true. If that sentence feels heavier than it should, don't look away from it. Sometimes the truth isn't loud. It's precise. The next morning, David didn't feel braver. He didn't wake up confident. He woke up unsettled. The sentence from Mr. Chen kept replaying in his mind. "You lost to the size of your thinking." By noon, he had already driven past the empty lot twice. On the third pass, he pulled over. He sat in the car for 10 minutes before making the call. The owner answered on the second ring. They agreed to meet that afternoon. When the numbers were laid out on the table, reality hit hard, and the down payment would use almost all their savings. The loan would double his monthly financial pressure. If this failed, there would be no cushion left. That evening, he and Sarah sat at the kitchen table in silence. Not romantic silence. Financial silence. The kind where both people know the risk, but don't want to say it first. "What if we lose everything?" David asked quietly. Sarah looked at him. "What if we slowly lose everything anyway?" That was the moment he understood something uncomfortable. Waiting wasn't neutral. Waiting was also a choice, and it was costing him. The next day, he signed the papers. His hand trembled slightly. Not because he felt strong, because he felt exposed. There's a myth that courage feels steady. It doesn't. Sometimes courage feels like shaking hands and dry lips. Sometimes it feels like acting before your fear finishes speaking. And that's exactly what David did. Construction began 2 weeks later. At first, it felt exciting. Noise meant movement. Dust meant progress. But excitement fades quickly when invoices arrive. The first delay came from a permit issue. 3 extra weeks. 3 extra weeks of rent? Then material costs increased. Then a refrigeration unit malfunctioned before installation was even complete. Every problem came with a price tag. And every price tag tightened something inside David's chest. Customers began asking questions. "Are you sure this is a good idea? You're competing with a national chain." He nodded politely. But doubt doesn't need outside voices to grow. It grows perfectly well on its own. Some nights he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, calculating numbers in the dark. If revenue didn't recover within 6 months, they would be in serious trouble. He thought about backing out, about cutting the expansion in half, about playing smaller again. The old instinct hadn't disappeared. It was just quieter. And then he remembered something Mr. Chen said without saying directly. The jar didn't grow the water. It grew the space. If he retreated now, he wouldn't just lose money. He would confirm the old belief that he wasn't built for bigger things. And that belief was more expensive than any loan. So he kept going. Not because he was certain, but because stopping would mean shrinking again. The new store opened on a quiet Monday morning. No balloons, no loud music. Just a new sign. Fresh paint and uncertainty. The first customer walked in around 9:15. He looked around slowly. "Nice upgrade," he said. But he still left with only a loaf of bread. The coffee corner stayed empty for most of the day. 2 chairs. No conversations. By closing time, revenue was better than the previous month. But not by much. That night, David didn't celebrate. He calculated. Again. And the next few weeks were inconsistent. Some days were promising. Some days felt like the old store again, just bigger and more expensive. There were moments he questioned everything. Was he just delaying failure? Had he confused courage with desperation? But then, small things began to shift. A retired couple started coming every morning for coffee. They didn't buy much, but they stayed. A local farmer asked if he could bring in fresh produce twice a week. A mother pinned a notice on the community board for her son's tutoring service. People lingered. They talked. They returned. Revenue didn't explode. It stabilized. Then it climbed. Not because he was cheaper than the supermarket, but because he stopped trying to compete on price. He competed on belonging, and belonging moves slower than discounts. But it lasts longer. For the first time in months, David felt something unfamiliar. Not relief, not pride. Ownership. He wasn't surviving anymore. He was building. 6 months later, the empty lot was no longer empty. It was filled with light, with quiet conversations in the coffee corner, with the smell of fresh bread and local produce, with people who stayed longer than they needed to. One afternoon, Mr. Chen stopped by. He didn't inspect shelves. He didn't analyze revenue. He simply stood near the entrance and watched. After a while, he said softly, "You didn't just expand your shop." A pause. You expanded what you believed you were allowed to do. That sentence stayed with David. Because the real shift hadn't happened in the construction phase. It happened the moment he stopped asking, "Is this safe?" and started asking, "Is this growth?" He used to think his life was as wide as what he could protect. Now he understood something different. Your life expands in direct proportion to the space you allow yourself to step into. The supermarket was still there, still larger, still louder, but it no longer defined him. Because this was never about competing. It was about refusing to shrink. And maybe that's the quiet truth behind this story. You don't lose opportunities overnight. You lose them slowly. Every time you convince yourself that just enough is all you deserve. Before you sleep tonight, ask yourself one question. Are you protecting your life or quietly shrinking it? If there's an empty lot in your world, a decision you've postponed, a risk you've labeled impractical, maybe it's not waiting for perfect timing. Maybe it's waiting for you to stop playing small